And then he walked away. And I was like, okay, I realized in that moment that I was at a crossroads and I could either let this make me bitter or make me better.
Mm.
And I thought, I can sit in a corner and I can feel sorry for myself. And I'm sure a lot of people would tell me I was justified for it. But what does that do for me? That doesn't help me. That doesn't get me anywhere. Um, or I could choose the other road and choose to let this make me better in some way. I don't know what that looks like. And I chose to let it make me better. And it was then that I knew that I needed to help other women in these situations.
Welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe, where we pour positive back into your day, sharing stories from real people who have made it through some real struggles, but were able to restore their health, hope, and peace. I'm Lisa Roers, your host, and as a certified coach, I'm here to guide you to be your best self-advocate, to help you restore your health, ignite your faith, and conquer those fears while you navigate your own healing journey so you can eventually exchange your dis-ease for durability. If you're looking for hope and encouragement to live a life you love, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. Wow, I hope you are getting outside today and enjoying some of that beautiful sunshine. As we move here into the fall, the sunshine is just such a beautiful thing. So today, we are tackling kind of a tough subject, but it's a really needed conversation. And since I know it sometimes can be a trigger for some, I just want you to know right out of the gates, today we're talking about abuse. And more importantly, how to break free from the history of abuse and how to heal. There are some startling statistics on the subject. According to Focus Ministries website, on the average, a woman in the United States is battered by their partner every 12 to 15 seconds. Up to 6 million women are believed to be beaten in their homes every year. In the Christian community, 1 out of every 4 women has experienced family violence. Wow, those are startling statistics. And like as if we didn't already have enough tough news to deal with, right? But here's the thing. We can break free from the cycle of abuse, and we can make choices today that'll affect our future, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. So it is an encouraging conversation, and today my friend Kathy Wisniewski is going to join us. She's going to talk about the hope and the beauty that can come from this all too common tragedy. Kathy is passionate about this topic. She's dedicated her health coach career and her focus to providing coaching services that will help survivors of abuse and will empower them to rewrite their stories and to stop feeling like they're defined by this tragedy, and instead to reclaim their health and their well-being across every area of their life. Abuse does affect the entire person and usually the entire family as well. Kathy guides her clients to set their path toward a future that's filled with strength and resilience and wellness. Woohoo! That's something we all want, and we all need it. Kathy is also host to the podcast Tragically Beautiful, where she interviews and shares hope from abuse survivors, letting them share their stories and celebrate, yes, the beautiful things that can come into a life beyond trauma. There is life after trauma, and it will get better, my friend. Let me just say that nice and clear. It will get better. Kathy is queen of candid conversations, and she offers some really inspiring words of hope as she and her guests on that podcast shed light on how a positive mindset can really help to be transformative and allow you to achieve complete healing. So I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation, and more importantly, be very encouraged by it. So let's dive into this conversation with my beautiful friend, Kathy. Hey, welcome back to the Sunshine Cafe. I'm excited today to have a friend of mine with us, Kathy Wisniewski, and she has an amazing spirit, just a passion for the Lord and a real passion to help people heal through abuses. And a lot of us have dealt with abuses, and we don't even sometimes know what to do with those emotions and the physical pain that comes with it. But there's a whole nother layer that comes onto it in our Christian faith and how to wrestle with what God allows to happen in our lives. And so I really think this conversation is going to be a huge encouragement for any of you out there who either have dealt with abuse, are currently dealing with it or have friends and family members who are dealing with healing through abuse. So, Kathy, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us and being willing to share some of your story with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. And I mentioned this to Kathy every time we talk. I just love this bougainvillea bush she has behind her. It's just a beautiful picture of her that she had taken in Greece. It's just a gorgeous picture. It makes me smile. It's one of my favorite colors. Well, Kathy, let's dive into it. I know you are a Christian. I know you have a solid faith there, and I know you've got this beautiful integrative health practice that you're doing as a health coach. Why don't you tell our listeners a little background about you and what it is that you're doing for your customers and clients?
Yeah, so I have been a health coach. I graduated from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in May of 2019 and kind of struggled with what I wanted my business to look like. Um, in addition to that, I work a full-time job, and in the fall it gets really busy. So I've had to, for several years kind of put my business aside during the fall and pick it back up. But I didn't really have a whole lot of direction as to where I wanted it to go and what I wanted to do. I knew I wasn't really super interested in one-on-one because I wanted to be able to help more people. And, one-on-one is very limited. So, as I was kind of working through this, I originally thought I wanted to work with female entrepreneurs, specifically, and then kind of through my own story of abusive relationships and kind of healing through that process, I came to realize that my real mission and my real purpose was helping other women who have been in abusive situations and helping them to heal holistically and kind of think about that whole person approach, and that healing is not just emotional from abuse or physical from abuse, if you have experienced physical abuse, but it's all of those things, right? It's like, even if the abuse you suffered was emotional, there's still a physical aspect to that, and a
Mhm.
mental aspect, and a spiritual aspect. And so that's what I'm
Right.
working on.
Yeah, well, my goodness, all of those emotions. I mean, the more science that they're able to do on this, the more they see that the health of our emotions impacts our physical beings and our physical health. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just completely integrated. Our whole bodies are not just one thing. I
Right.
just think it's so silly when people think they broke an arm, so it's not going to affect the rest of their body, but it does. Or
Mhm.
they were abused, maybe emotionally, but that doesn't affect the rest of their body, but it does. All of those things
Mhm.
affect that.
Mhm.
So, okay, so tell us a little bit about how how you kind of morphed over to this topic area and why it was kind of a passion for you.
So, as I mentioned, I have been in a series of abusive relationships. There was one that was physically abusive and emotionally abusive. Then there was one that was spiritually abusive and emotionally abusive. But it's the last one that I was in that really kind of shook me a little bit. I've been a Christian since I was 18, and I've, had those times in my life where I think we all do, those ebbs and flows where you're really close to the Lord and where you're not close to the Lord, but not as close as you normally are.
Mhm.
And I think that those have corresponded with the good times and the bad times, right? It's like when things are bad, that's when we tend to run to the Lord and spend all this kind of time with him and seek his will and his help and all of those kinds of things. But then when things are good, we kind of like, okay, I got this.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's
It's the
a
hard
little
times that drive
easier.
us to it to go back to the Lord. You're right.
Exactly, exactly. So this last abusive relationship that I was in was, I was actually married to my high school sweetheart. We met when we were 14, and we dated for a while in high school, and then we lost touch after graduation. And then I was in a physical abusive relationship. That ended, and then I looked him up again. I still remembered his phone number, took a chance and called it one night. We actually went out to dinner that night, and we were together for the next 2.5 years, and almost got married. We started talking about marriage, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he dumped me, and then within 11 months was married to someone else. And so then after that, he was my everything, which
Mhm.
never should have been, right? I mean, we should never do anything that puts anyone other than God on the throne. And I had put him on such a pedestal. And I
Mm.
think it goes back to meeting in such formative years. It was like I had decided when I was 14 that I loved this boy, now this man. And, there was nobody in the world that could be any better than second best. And so once I found out that he was married, then I was like, okay, well, I'm never going to have, anything as good again. This is my, mid-20s thinking. And so then I ended up meeting someone and ended up getting married as well. And then that turned into a spiritually abusive relationship where we were in leadership in the church and he used the church and my faith against me
Oh,
while he was cheating and doing things that he should not be doing and still in leadership and all of those kinds of things. So that was that was also a time that rocked my faith.
yeah.
But then, 10 years after that, I was in the process of a divorce from this man, and I received a letter in the mail from this high school sweetheart that just said, I'm so sorry for the way things ended. I love you. I've always loved you. I always will love you. And he said, I don't want to mess up anything you have going on, but please just email me and let me know you're okay.
Wow.
And P.S., I'm in the process of a divorce.
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Mhm. So
I can
I
just
was
only
already,
imagine your moment of,
uh-huh.
your eyes and your whole emotional state when you read that letter.
Oh yes, it was woo, woo, up and down roller coaster. I was like, oh, this is my chance. This is my fairy tale. This is the way things always should have been and just didn't work out that way. And so because I was already in the process of a divorce, I did reach out to him. We ended up getting back together and we got married. And the first 3 years of our marriage were probably the best times of my life. We
Mm.
just were, we spent all the time together that we could. We went on vacations. We lived in a beautiful home in one of the best towns in the state, and we were doing very well for ourselves. And then, right at about year 4, things started to change. I noticed, and he wasn't wanting to talk as much. He wasn't wanting to do things together. Like we used to always go grocery shopping together on Friday nights, and we would joke and say that was our date night. And all of a sudden it started to turn to, well, why don't you just go without me tonight? Why don't you? And it was those little things that started to add up. And he would come home and not want to talk, and he would go to his room and play on the computer, or he would, be out in the garage working on cars or something like that. And then this just kind of started to grow, and then it was complete withdrawal, and he basically had set me aside in every sense of the word. And what you expect from a marital partner was not there anymore. There was no love or affection or communication or
Okay.
anything. Yeah. And then it started in with the arguments and the way that he would manipulate the conversation. And we would argue about something and he would say things like, you have a terrible memory and everybody knows that. That's not at all the way it happened. Like, no,
So
it is how
turning
it happened.
everybody on you in that respect,
Yeah.
then. Like you're the
Yeah.
only one that doesn't see it, Kathy, right? That
Right.
kind of a
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. And this is all you, all you. It's like he would provoke a reaction and then get mad at me for the reaction.
Mm.
Um, so at that time, I didn't know or understand the word narcissist and gaslighting. I mean, those are all fairly new words, and we're going back several years now. So I didn't understand exactly what was happening. But to fast forward the story a little bit, because there's a lot in between, I did receive a message one night on Facebook from someone, and the message started out, "I know you don't know me, but," and those are never good messages to receive.
Oh, right.
And it was from a girl who he knew from a church that he was attending. And she basically told me that she had been with my husband for the previous 4 years. She did not know he was married. He never revealed that to her, that he was promising to marry her. And he had actually told her that he was in the process of a divorce once she found out. Once she found out. But of course, once she found out, she dumped him right away. And he's like, I'm in the process of a divorce. Like, yes, I'm going to make this happen. Da, da, da. And so, even when I confronted him on that, he denied it. He completely denied it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
he
It
was
was,
so delusional that he didn't even, yeah, wow. Okay.
hmm hmm And so then it just got worse after that. Now, because I've known him since we were 14, I knew about some childhood trauma that he had been through. And so I had kind of convinced myself, okay, this is his trauma that he hasn't dealt with. And I told myself, I'm going to love him through this. We're going to get through this. And the more I tried, the worse it got, the more hateful he became towards
Mm.
me, the worse things he would say. He would, get in my face and literally scream right into my ear. And
Mm.
it just got worse and worse, and to a point that I couldn't take it anymore. One of the scariest things he's ever said to me was we were standing in the kitchen and I said to him, I cannot believe the number of lies you had to tell, the number of people you lied to, the number of stories you had to keep up with. And he just looked at me and he was like, wasn't that hard? And I was like, oh, this is a different level of person I'm dealing with.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I
Yeah.
I think lying is its own sort of addiction.
Hmm.
And I think it's progressive, much like a cocaine or an alcohol or anything else, because I think once you start telling lies, well, then guess what? You got to tell lies to cover up the lies. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's got to be so complicated to keep all the threads straight in your head. But I think
Hmm.
it is somewhat of an addiction. And I think people get to the point where they don't even realize they're lying anymore. It's just
Yeah.
such
It's
a
their personal reality. Yeah.
exactly, it's just a character in a play that they're playing or some crazy
Hmm.
movie script that they've got going in their head.
I,
Well,
I think he thrived too on having a secret life. There's
mm,
something different going on over here that this person doesn't know about, and this person doesn't know about what.
yeah,
And that I think is really exciting to him and
sure.
exhilarating for some weird reason.
Yeah. Well, it's exhilarating, yeah, to have that secret, I've got a secret nobody knows, and how well can I hide it and continue it? And I guess there's something there, but unfortunately, he doesn't realize just how thrilling a beautiful marriage can be. Just how
Mhm.
thrilling a high integrity, God fearing marriage can be more thrilling and more exciting than any secret lie. It's crazy.
Yeah. It was crazy. And so to bring it back to your original question, I was actually at home in my home office one night. This was about 2 weeks after I found out what had been going on. And I was in a puddle of my own tears on the floor and I was sobbing. And he came to the door of my office and kind of just hovered over me. And he's like, what are you crying about? And I
Mm.
said, what am I crying about? He's like, are you still crying about this? As if it was nothing, like as if you didn't just betray me in the worst way for years and years and years.
For the entire
Um,
time of your marriage, basically.
yes. Yep. Yep. And he said, he goes, for God's sake, pick yourself up off the floor. You look ridiculous. And then he walked away. And I was like, okay. I realized in that moment that I was at a crossroads and I could either let this make me bitter or make me better.
Mm.
And I thought, I can sit in a corner and I can feel sorry for myself. And I'm sure a lot of people would tell me I was justified for it. But what does that do for me? That doesn't help me. That doesn't get me anywhere. Um, or I could choose the other road and choose to let this make me better in some way. I don't know what that looks like. And I chose to let it make me better. And it was then that I knew that I needed to help other women in these situations. But I still hadn't connected the dots yet as to what that looked like.
Okay. Sure. You were just choosing that path, but you didn't know really
Mhm.
what the path was going to be yet.
Right,
Okay.
right. And so I actually stayed in the home for about a year after that, just trying, trying, trying. And we did go to counseling twice, and both times he would basically yes the pastor to death. And as soon as we got outside, he would say, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. I'm not going back. And
Mm.
so that didn't work. And so I did eventually move out. I was trying to do the tough love thing and thought maybe this would make a difference. It did not. It just made things worse. But in order to try and take my mind off of things, that's when I decided to put myself through health coach training program
Mm.
and did that while we were trying to work through all of this. And that was a time that I grew closer to God than I had ever been. And it was the most difficult time in my life, but also the sweetest
Mm.
in that regard. It was, I was constantly talking to God, constantly communing with God. I felt like, he was always speaking into my life and reminding me that he's there and reminding me that he loves me and all of these things. And it it actually added a layer of almost almost confusion and questioning because as Christians we do have that side that's like I know that God is in control. I know that he loves me. I know that he's going to work things together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. But on the other hand, there was that level of, but God, you are in control. So why is this happening? Why are you allowing this to happen? And that was for the first time in my life after we knew that we were getting divorced and I eventually moved out of state and all of that. It was at that point that I was like, God, all I ever wanted to do was to honor you with this. I wanted to love him. I wanted to be your light for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand this. And I had never been the kind of person before that has said like, why me? Why me? Why me?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've often said, why not me? Somebody, if somebody has to take this on, why not me? Um, in other things in my life, other difficulties. But in this one, I couldn't get over the why me. Why is this happening? Especially like because I've loved him all of my life practically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so this was the first time in my life that I can say that I actually walked away from God because I felt like I had to have that answer, that why. I need to know why before I can move forward with you, God,
Yeah.
because this is completely not fair. I was only trying to honor you. This feels like punishment for trying to do good and all of that. And so, yeah, I walked away for a couple of years, but um, I found my way back, or he found me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many things in your story here, Kathy, that I would love to touch on, but don't lose track of where you are in the story here because I want to hear how you came back to the Lord. But I think that's a very reasonable response when we go through hard things, especially when it feels like it wasn't our fault. When you're in a relationship, it does take two people. And I know
Mhm.
many, many, many people who have been in situations like you were, where they were giving their part, but the other person didn't. And everybody will say it takes two, and it does. And so, everybody has a part to play. But you had mentioned a couple of relationships that you had had of people who were actually even in the church. And I
Mhm.
want to address that because I think there's this fallacy that people who go to church are great and perfect and we don't have any problems and we don't make mistakes. And that is so not right. That is so
Mhm.
wrong. People will say, well, I'm not going to church. There's just too many hypocrites there. And I'm like, yeah, we've always got room for more. Come on in. You know,
Right, right.
I
Yeah.
mean, the church doesn't house sinless people. The church is a
Right.
home where sinful, mistake ridden people gather because there's someone there who can change hearts. And that
Mhm.
the only person who can change hearts is Jesus. Now
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that he will, because like your ex-husband has to be willing to change.
Right.
But there is an avenue for change if people are willing to surrender to
Mhm.
Jesus's plan. And if people follow Jesus's word, if they follow the advice in the Bible for the best life you could possibly live, you're going to live a really good life. And I just think that's just the whole concept that people who go to church are perfect, and we're really, really not.
Right.
Sometimes
Right. Right.
people who are at church, even the leaders, like you said, are the biggest offenders. So that's a critical piece. But I also loved how you said you hit a crossroad where you could either be bitter or take it and make yourself better. So
Mhm.
what brought you back to the Lord in those moments where after you had walked away and you were really frustrated for God allowing these things to happen? What brought you back?
Yeah. So it actually took several years. And one of the catalysts for it was while I was kind of in the midst of things and I was still living in the home, I had this wonderful Christian mentor who I adored. And I was over at her house sitting at her kitchen table sobbing. And we were talking things through. And she had said to me, okay, I'm about to say something to you and you're not going to like it. She said, but it's not for now. It's for you to tuck it away, bring it back out when you're ready, grapple with it, figure out the answer, and then go share this with the world, whatever you learn. And of course, I thought, what on earth is she about to share with me?
What a great way to captivate your attention.
Yes. As I'm like, sobbing at her table. Um, and then she said, you've now been in several abusive relationships and you're the common denominator, and you need to figure out why. And of course, my first internal reaction was, oh my gosh, like, how could she say this to me? But then it immediately switched to, she loves me. She has been a mentor to me for years. I know she would never say anything to hurt me. She only wants to help me. And so I did that. I took what she said, I kind of hid it in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me several years to bring it back out as I was going through my healing process. And I felt like I was in a good enough place emotionally to really grapple with it. I brought it back out, and it took me several days of journaling and thinking. And at this point, I'm still, walked away from the Lord. And, I didn't change what I believed about the Lord. It didn't like make me say, I don't believe there is a God at all. I always believed that God was real and he was there. I just felt like he was punishing me for some reason. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have my answer. So I was like, I need a break from you, was basically where I was.
Okay.
And so as I was going through this, I realized that like the reason I had these multiple abusive relationships was because for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't love or value myself enough to be able to put any kind of boundaries or standards in place for myself. And so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of just went with, like this person is interested in me. I never did the dating thing ever. I never like went out on a date with someone I just met or anything. These three relationships were all people that I had known for a while and had built a friendship with or whatever. So I'd never done the dating thing at
Mm-hmm.
all. Um, and so it was, yeah, just realizing that I didn't love or value myself enough, that I was just falling into these relationships with people because they were there, I guess. And, after that second time he had broken up with me in my mid-20s, then I had this mindset, like I said, that the only thing I can get now can never be better than second best. And so that marriage that I was in prior to this recent ex, I never should have gotten into that marriage at all. Um, but the second reason was that I realized that I had always put these relationships above God. I let them take the throne, and I took God off of it. And so that has been that has been the major piece, the major reason for all of my struggles. I brought them on myself ultimately. God didn't do this to me, and I never thought that he did this to me, but like realizing that I actually made these choices myself, I actually brought this on myself. That was a really interesting place to be. And like I said, it took me a couple of years even after that before I decided to come back to the Lord. And I was just on a walk one day in one of the local parks, and I was just kind of praying, and I'm like, God, I know that like it's me. I know that the problem is me. I know that eventually I'm going to come back to you because I always do. Of course, this is the furthest away from you that I've ever been, but I know I'm going to come back to you. So I know that I will save myself a lot of heartache and trouble if I just come back to you and forget about this question that I have of why did this happen? So this is what I'm attempting to do, God. I want to try and work my way back to you and build that relationship again. And it was like once I surrendered that to the Lord and said, I know it's me. I want to come back. I'm still angry. And God wants to hear those things too. It's not like he doesn't know.
Mm-hmm.
He knows when we're angry or upset, and we have a right to bring that to him. We're to approach the throne of grace with confidence and boldness and tell him what we're thinking and feeling. And so it was almost as soon as I said that where I felt him like speak to me. And I know that can sound weird. It's not like I heard an audible voice. He spoke to my heart and basically said, the why doesn't matter. And no matter why this happened, what I allowed the outcome to be is the most loving outcome I could have allowed.
Oh,
And
wow.
that really sat with me. I was like, it's so true, because what if this had gone the way that I wanted it to?
Mm-hmm.
I never would have felt secure in the relationship. Every time he was 5 minutes late, I would wonder where he was. There was no guarantee that we were going to build a relationship back to what I wanted anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to live like that.
Right.
And it was in that moment that I was like, okay, like I don't need to know why. I don't need to know why.
That is profound, Kathy, that he would whisper something into your heart about what I allowed was the best outcome that I could have for you as a loving father, right? I just think that's
Hmm.
profound.
Hmm. Yeah, it was awesome. I love when he does things like that.
I know, right? I sometimes wish he wrote a little bit more in neon lights, but the
Yes,
whispers are good.
billboards.
Right. Um,
Turn this way.
exactly. I wrote some notes here as you were talking because there's so many different things. I think as women, we have a tendency all too often, especially when we're young, to put those relationships above everything.
Hmm.
Ourself, our love for the Lord, our own interests, our own desires. And I love that the Lord brought you to that space of realization to understand that God has to be first
Hmm.
in order
Hmm.
for you to have the best relationship.
Right.
So that was one
And
of the
all
things.
these things will be added unto you.
Exactly. Seek
Yeah.
me
Seek
first,
him
says the
first.
Lord. Right. That's such a good piece of wisdom. And the second, well, I have three things here. The second thing was when you were talking about whether you were good enough for these men that you were dating. And I think all too often, I mentor a couple young ladies, and I think all too often they're constantly asking if they're good enough for that person, if what they could do to be better for that person. And I just asked this young lady the other day, I said, next time you go out on a date, ask yourself if they're good enough for you.
Hmm.
Much like an
Right.
interview would be with a company, if you're going on an interview, you don't want to just interview them for them to give you the job, but you also want to ask if that's the kind of company you want to be working for. And I
Right.
think that
Right.
same kind of mentality would help us when we're early in those relationships and trying to decide, could this be someone I could marry? Do I have a list of things that are my absolute must-haves for a man that I would marry? And does he meet those criteria? Is he high integrity? Is a man of faith? Does he treat his mom well? Does he, all the
Hmm.
different
Yeah.
things that are indicators of that. So interview them as much as you want them to be interviewing you for whether you're good enough. And then this last one I just think is profound is that what your friend had said, that you're the common denominator of
Hmm.
those relationships that were hurtful. And I think you could apply that to a lot of different things, Kathy. I think not just the relationship situation when you're in an abusive relationship, but people who are fraught with all kinds of health issues, they're the
Hmm.
common denominator and their choices are the common denominator. And it's so hard to hear that because you feel like, what? You're telling me it's my fault? And
Right.
that's not a happy thing to hear. But in some realistic, kind of little tough love ways, yes.
Hmm.
I was the fault for some health things that I had. There were choices that I was making. I maybe didn't realize the ramification of those choices at the moment, but the
Hmm.
fact was I was making those choices.
Right.
So similarly, you were making choices with the men you were dating and the relationship that you had with them versus God and yourself that was putting you basically at risk over and over and over again.
Hmm.
And that little whisper into your heart might have been the only way that God could have gotten you out of that pattern is to help
Hmm.
you realize that he needed to be first.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. And now I
Beautiful.
say, I don't know if I'll ever get married again. It's easy to sit here on this side and be like, oh no, I'm done. Stay away.
Yes. Yeah.
But, if that's what God has, I'm open to it. But I always say now, like, I want to be so hidden within the Lord that whoever he is has to seek the Lord to find me.
Oh,
And
that's good.
that is, now I know myself well enough and have done enough healing that I know I will never settle again.
Love that to be so hidden in the Lord that he has to seek the Lord to find you. I love that.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's great. All right, my friend, what kinds of things are you doing given this plethora of experience and healing and victories that the Lord has given you through those processes? How are you using those to help other women?
Yes, so this is one of the most exciting things in my life right now, and why I'm not out dating or anything. I did tip my toe in, and I was like, "Mm-mm, not for me." But I just wanted to focus on these other things that I'm doing. I realized that my stories of abuse are not as bad as what other people have endured. But I also realized that somebody else's trauma doesn't negate my own. And so it was really important to me to, because my story isn't as deep and as difficult and hard and terrible as some others, it was important for me to use my voice to be the voice for those people who maybe don't feel like they can speak up. And so I started a podcast called Tragically Beautiful. And it's basically, I feature stories of abuse survivors and of course, they tell the story to kind of lay the foundation. They tell pieces of the story, but we try to focus on the beautiful. What are the beautiful things that have, entered into your life, that you've created, that you've built, that you've learned, that you've found out about yourself, either because of or in spite of the abuse that you suffered? What is beautiful now? And I love to do that because I want people who are in abusive situations or newly out to realize that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and life does get better, and that you're always only one choice away from a better life.
Yes, and that the
So
abuse does not define you. The abuse is
exactly.
something that happened. It happened, it was there, but it's not who you are. And I love that
Right.
you're helping people realize and focus on the beautiful. Like, who are you
Hmm.
now after you've come through the storm
Right.
versus, using that as any kind of a label. That's beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah. And I also just this year started inviting on some professionals and experts because I didn't want people to listen and be like, okay, that's great. This person got through, but now what? So
Yeah.
I started to invite on these professionals and experts, counselors and therapists, and even like motivational speakers and things like that, just to offer some practical advice for people, or tips or suggestions or wisdom that people might be able to use who are in it now.
Right.
So that's one of the things I do. I release that twice a month, and it's been really well received. So I'm excited about that. Intend to keep going. And then I also, again, switched my focus from female entrepreneurs to abuse survivors, and I am just finishing up a course which is called Abuse Healers Academy, and it is basically going through the same framework that I use to heal, which I call the TEMPS framework, and it is exactly like I said, what I use to heal and what I think can work for other people in order to take a whole person approach to healing from abuse. Like we talked about in the beginning, like even if the abuse she suffered was emotional abuse, there's still that physical aspect. There's still the high cortisol, the
Mhm.
different ways that your body is affected, because we know that, trauma lives in the body.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited about that too. And I hope that it will help a lot of people to maybe speed up the process a little bit of healing. And, with what my mentor said to me, both in my podcast and in my course, I vowed to myself that I would not shy away from the hard truths because I needed to hear it. I never thought that she would say that to me, but it was the most um, impressionable thing I think that anybody said to me through that whole process. And so I want to make sure that although it might not be what people want to hear all the time, that those hard truths are shared.
Yeah, that's really, really good and so helpful. And, just for anyone listening out there, I really want you to take to heart what Kathy just said, because trauma lives in our body and our body has memory of that trauma. So if you experience something a long, long time ago and you're like, I'm over it, done with it, I'm not going to even go there. If you can't go there and talk about it pretty comfortably, you haven't fully dealt with it. Once you
Hmm.
can talk about something without tears falling and without feeling the fear and the stress and kind of some sort of a PTSD on it, if you can talk about it without feeling those feelings, then you're good. You've addressed it and you're in a good place. But if
Right.
every time you think about maybe even going back to even remembering it, you have tears and you're feeling that stress, you're not done healing from it. And if I can just please encourage anybody listening, you have to go back and do the hard work of
Hmm.
peeling back that onion and addressing that. And once you do, there's such freedom on the other side to just
Right.
deal with it, put it in its place and be past it. So let it go so you can
Hmm.
release your body from all that. Because, I've heard of and I've well dealt with clients of mine who have had deep rooted abuses or hurts or pains that they never dealt with. And they thought, well, they just stuffed them and they're okay, just stuffing them. But it created physical ailments later in life.
Right.
So it's a really
Yeah.
good thing that they find some way to deal with those traumas that they have buried in their past. And then the other thing is just starting, just reaching out to someone and letting someone walk on that path with you, just like whether it's Kathy or someone like her, to just let somebody walk side by side, because you might need someone like Kathy had, a friend and mentor who can point out some blind spots that maybe you didn't realize, and
Hmm.
that's going to be a game changer. So,
Hmm. Absolutely.
yeah. Well, Kathy, I'm just so thrilled to have had you on the show and to just hear your story.
Thank
And I
you.
think it's going to be a huge encouragement for people. I know it will be as they, as people, there's so many people around us who are dealing with abuses, and it doesn't matter for anyone listening how severe or how insignificant you feel the abuses that you endured. If you're thinking about it, if it's ruminating in your head, it's important enough to deal with, no matter how
Mhm.
light or how deep that abuse goes, and deal with it. Peel back those onion layers, let yourself feel all the feels, let yourself go through the emotions, and then forgive and move on. Forgive not because it was okay. Forgive because that person doesn't deserve to still have control over you. And so
Right.
you can take your power back by just forgiving them and releasing that. Let God's wrath deal with that person. It's
Bless
going
and release is what I
to
say.
bless it and release it. Exactly. Well, Kathy, how can people find you? Tell us again your podcast name and then website or wherever people can locate you.
Sure. The podcast is called Tragically Beautiful. And I have an Instagram specifically for that, which is at Tragically Beautiful Podcast. And then my regular Instagram is at Coach Kathy Wisniewski, which is kind of difficult name to spell, but there's an Eagles player, or used to be, that has that name. So if you know him, that's it's the same spelling. Um, and yeah, my website is kathywisniewski.com.
Perfect. And I will have that spelling in the show notes so people can reference that, or probably even in the title. So people can see it right there in the title on the episode. So, Kathy, such a blessing always to have you and your
Thank
time and your
you.
wisdom. Thank you very much for being with us on the show today. And I look forward to having you back at a future date.
Oh, I've loved being on. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, isn't Kathy just a inspiring and hopeful soul? I have 5 powerful takeaways for you today. Number 1, whatever your heart looks like today, you can choose to let it make you bitter or better. It might feel kind of like a harsh and tough message to hear, but if you ponder this truth, you'll see that the simplicity of that crossroad is also pretty beautiful. Choose to be bitter or choose to let it make you better. Number 2, the toughest times are usually the times where we grow the most and where our faith is really ignited. When you feel all is going well and life is easy, you can kind of slip into that mentality that you really don't need God, even if it was, in fact, His blessing that allowed you to have the opportunities and the health and the time and the resources that you're enjoying right now. And while you might be wondering, why did God allow this? I think Kathy's comment was just so brilliant when she said she felt some kind of whisper from God saying, the why doesn't matter. Because no matter why it happened, what He's allowing the outcome to be is the most loving outcome He could have allowed. God's vision for your life is eternal. He wants to see you change for the better, not for today or for tomorrow, but for your eternal best. So if you're in the storm right now, allow the hardship to bring you closer to God. Draw close to Him. He'll draw close to you, and He'll speak into your life and remind you that He's there. And most importantly, He loves you. And despite the temporary pain, He wants to bring you to a better place. Number 3, Kathy vowed to herself that she would never shy away from those hard truths because she realized she really needed to hear it. Her mentor, a dear friend of many, many years who loved Kathy and really only wanted the very best for her, had to give her a very difficult word. Now, she said this after warning her that she was about to share a difficult truth, but she said, "You've now been in several abusive relationships, and you're the common denominator. You need to figure out why." So whether abuse is part of your journey or not, if you're seeing some negative patterns in your life that kind of keep repeating over and over again, patterns that are causing you and your family pain, whether it be poor relationships, poor health, a series of job failures, layoffs, getting let go, or just constantly falling short on meeting the expectations of others, well, then it might be time, my friend, to take a hard look inward and ask yourself, what am I doing or saying, or how am I behaving, or what decisions am I making that's causing this cycle to repeat over and over again? And once you've identified those couple of things, then you just need to ask yourself, how can I make a permanent change so I don't repeat this pattern again? Find a mentor, lean into God, dig down and find that determination that you have inside of you right now to be your best. You have the power, my friend. You have everything you need inside you right now to make the change You can do this. Number 4, love yourself enough to put good boundaries in your life and raise those standards of yours. If you're dating or interviewing for a job, consider whether your approach is balanced. Are you spending all of your energy and worry wondering if you are right for them? Have you also stopped and paused to think whether they are right for you? The goal, my friend, is not to be married. The goal is to marry the right person. The goal is not just to find another job, but to find one, a company that will build your talents and match your values so you'll want to give them your very best. Good boundaries and a balanced approach will help you find the path and the people that will end up being a blessing on your future. And finally, and most importantly, remember, takeaway number 5, God is on the throne. Be very, very careful not to put any relationship, any person, any job, or any other priority above Him. Because if you do, that pursuit is doomed to fail. As Kathy so beautifully said, hide yourself in the Lord so well that anyone looking for you has to seek the Lord first to find you. I just love that. So that's it for today. Hey, thank you so much for listening in today. I just want to say here at the end, if you are in an abusive situation right now, I just really want to remind you, just as Kathy said, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, my friend. Life can, and it will get better. Each day is just one more chance to make a choice, to take action for a better life. And you can choose to take that action that will free you and give you a better life. Reach out to a mentor or a friend or some kind of a support. I put 2 links in the show notes here that'll give you resources for how you can step out today. Take the first step that you need to today so you can make your life better, both for you and your family for tomorrow. You can do this. I'm here cheering you on every step of the way. Also, I want to let all of my listeners know that I am launching my course here at the end of September, Fast, Pray, Heal. If you have ever wondered about fasting for healing, if you've ever thought that maybe there's another way to ignite your faith in a powerful way, then this course is for you. We're going to have a ton of fun. We're going to learn a lot, and we're going to apply this ancient tool to ignite our faith and to achieve healing in ways we never thought possible. Please go to my website at lisaroers.com for all the details. Thank you for listening and watching today. God bless you, and we'll see you back here next time at the Sunshine Cafe.